Mike Dell's World number 300. Yep, I made it to 300. Barely.
I think it's time for Mike Dell's World.
There it is.
How about sharing one more coconut cream pie? How about skinny dipping down by the shore? How about spending more time repairing the minnow? Who packs brandy or gowns on a 3-hour tour? Thank you, Gilligan. Thank you, Skipper. Thank you, Thurston Lovey Ho. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Ginger. How come everyone's clothing and makeup stay perfect? How come nobody ever picks up a 10? How come Gilligan sleeps in a hut with a skipper? How come nobody hits on Marianne? Thank you, cosmonauts. Thank you, Jungle Boy. Thank you, astronaut named Saul. Thank you, Runaway. Thank you, Evil Twins. Thank you, thanks, cannibals. So this tells of our castaways here for 98 shows, such a long, long time. They're stranded in these roles for life. Now that is an uphill climb. How come Dusty's trail only ran for one season? How come there aren't conventions like for Star Trek? How about an IMAX 3D Gilligan movie? How about having Orson or Don Wells direct? Thank you, Gilligan. Thank you, Skipper. Thank you, Ginger Professor. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Howells. Thank you, Sherwood Schwartz.
That's one of the many songs I got from the PodSafe Music Network. Rest in peace. Back in the day. Welcome to episode 300. Sorry it's a little later than I expected, but I've been fighting a cold, and I may have a coughing fit, but I have my coughing button ready to go, so you shouldn't hear any of that. Just wanted to get this episode out and waiting long enough. Probably not going to be the extravaganza I thought it was going to be, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about starting this show, I've probably told this story a lot, but hey, I'm going to tell it again. Uh, I was watching Tech TV, and Leo Laporte, and I think at the time was Kate Patello. We're talking about podcasting. Like, oh, that sounds interesting. Wonder what that's all about. And once they got done, the show, and I went into my antique now, state-of-the-art 486 or Pentium 1 computer or whatever it was, and on half-duplex cable internet, which was where you still had to dial in to send anything up to the internet, and then down it would come through the cable. Kind of a weird setup, but hey, it's bleeding edge back in 2005. Actually, probably late 2004 when this all happened. And just about that same time, I had purchased a iPod Shuffle, I think it was. Yeah, the one that looked like a stick of gum, and I'm digging through my desk drawer here. I believe that iPod Shuffle is right here in this desk drawer, and I do believe it actually still powers up. But at the time, I was working night shift at a print shop, and working the overnight shift, so I'd go into work about 10:30 and home, leave work about 7, something like that in the morning. And overnight's the only radio that was even remotely interesting was Art Bell. Well, of course, Art Bell retired and then came back and then retired again and then came back and then retired again and then came back and all that. And I got kind of tired of that. So I thought, let's try this podcasting thing. And I was just thinking of it as a listener. And back then, it was a lot harder to get podcasts than it is now. Now you can just come to MikeDell.com, click on Mike Dell's World there, and there's your podcast. Hit the play button, and there you are. And then if you want to get fancier and subscribe, you hit the appropriate button and subscribe on your phones or whatever. But back then, you needed a portable media device. iPods were just sort of becoming the big thing. But, there was other ones, iRiver, and, just about everybody made some sort of an MP3 player, and that's really all you needed, because you would actually subscribe to the podcast, and you had to know the RSS feed, so, that's another difficulty. But you could download a free software called iPodder, I believe it was, on Windows, and in iPodder, then you'd set it up to where it would sync with a playlist on your iTunes software. And then when you plugged in your iPod, it would sync your podcast to that playlist. And, they were just one big playlist of, however many podcasts you subscribe to. And the other thing I would do is there was a few radio shows I liked, but they weren't on when I was on, so I'd go to their archives and download those. Bruce Williams used to be a real popular talk radio guy, and he'd put all 3 hours, 3 different MP3 files on his website in the archives. Well, he didn't do it. Somebody did it. And you were able to download those. So, on the night or the day, before I go to bed, I was working night shift, I would make sure that I would get all that stuff downloading, and I'd leave iPodder running, and iPodder would go get, the few podcasts that were out there. And, at that time, I think I subscribed to like 4 podcasts, and there was maybe 20 in that directory. And, at the time I actually started podcasting, I think there was something like 90 in there. So I always like to say I'm one of the first 100 podcasters, but I don't know if that's exactly true. But I started listening to Trucker Tom Wiles, and he's still at it, still out driving and still podcasting. TruckerTomPodcast.com. I used to listen to Adam Curry's Daily Source Code, which I think the feed's still active, but I don't think he does episodes for that anymore. He's doing a show called No Agenda with John C. Dvorak from Tech TV. Originally, that's how I knew him anyway. But he also writes for PC Magazine, a bunch of other stuff, and he's a radio guy in the San Francisco area. But they do that No Agenda show. They just passed 10 years, so that's not recent history that started. But anyway, I would load up that iPod, and it only had 512 megabytes, I believe, of space. And that was just about enough, and it had about enough battery capacity to last me my 10-hour shift or whatever it was at work. And that's what I did. I listened to either downloaded radio shows or podcasts. Another one was Yeast Radio. Madge Weinstein was actually Tim Bluestein that played the person Madge, and it was a raunchy show. There's another one called The Daily Download, where this guy supposedly actually went in and did his morning business and recorded a podcast. Leave that up. So there was some raunchy stuff going on, but podcasting was new, and it was a big FU to the FCC to be able to cuss into a microphone. That wasn't something that was done back in 2004, 2005. Soon thereafter, I come across one called Pacific Coast Hellway. In fact, Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, I talked about him before. He's the one that did these openers here. Here's one.
You're listening to Mike Dell's World with your host, Mike Dell.
Anyway, that's Mark, and he just sent those to me recently. But he did Pacific Coast Hellway. I listened to that one. There was Ed's Mixed Bag, Ed Ovett. He's still around. He's not podcasting, but old versions of his podcasts are showing up on Joy Radio or iJoy or something like that. I don't know, some streaming radio station out of Florida. And he's still actively on Facebook anyway. I haven't talked to him in a while. But, it was great, I had all this stuff to listen to that wasn't commercial radio, and it was, there was no commercials in podcasts back then to speak of. Of course, TWIT, This Week in Tech, the original Tech TV crew all got together and started that, and of course, Legal Reports turned that into a whole network, and it's doing pretty well that way. And so I had lots of stuff to listen to, and on my little iPod shuffle. And, over the years, I, of course, listened to lots of podcasts, but, mostly that got me motivated. You know what? I can do this. So I thought I was going to be another Adam Curry, and I started this podcast. Of course, it was called Benzoid Report because I lived in Benzie County. And along about that time is when I, started dating my wife, and before we were married, and so that was pulling on me a little bit too. Nothing to do with podcasting, but I was living out in Lake Ann. She had a house here in town, the one I'm sitting in right now, and so I'd go home still. Most of the time I'd come over here sometimes after work and sleep here, but most of the time I'd go out there, and I couldn't get to sleep right away. So anyway, I bought a laptop. I thought, that'd be the perfect thing for podcasting. I can carry it around. If I want to make a recording, I just make a recording right where I'm at. I didn't know anything about microphones or RSS feeds and all that stuff. So I just used the little stick microphone that came with a laptop. That was before laptops had microphones built in. And I sat out on the front porch of my house in Lake Ann, and I did Benzoid Report number 1. And it sounded like crap. But I pressed on, did it. I downloaded Audacity to edit it and make it into an MP3. That was an adventure, back then especially. And I found a podcast hosting company who shall remain nameless because I can't remember. And signed up with them and got my RSS feed from them and, all that good stuff. And I had Benzoid Report number 1 out there. Unfortunately, Benzoid Report number 1 through 29 are lost to the Bitbucket. I have not found it anywhere on any old hard drives. I was digging for them, too, while I was sick here this week. Actually went down and fired up an old Windows XP machine that actually did boot up. I was surprised. And didn't have a password, which is a good thing because I would have not known the password. And I plugged a bunch of old hard drives in there and searched for those files. No such luck. So Benzoid report number 1, I would love to have played it for you here, at least a little bit of it, and nope, can't do it. So I went on about my business, doing a podcast every so often, and I'd play music in it and do, all that, trying to be like Adam Curry. Of course, I had a crappy microphone and all that. And I forget who gave it to me, but somebody gave me an old microphone, and I still have it. And I had a nice wooden cutting board that was, maybe, a small cutting board. It was probably a foot by 6 inches, rectangular wooden cutting board. And I thought, that'd be a great mic stand. So this microphone that whoever gave me was one of those microphones you use for a PA system on a gooseneck, but it didn't have any bass to it. So I screwed that in. I drilled a hole into the wood and I put little rubber feet on it from Radio Shack and wired up the connector so it would plug into my laptop's mic connector. And that sounded like crap too, but it sounded better. It sounded like better crap. But I pressed on. Then I got an old Radio Shack mixer and put a different end on the microphone, and that sounded a little better. And, we won't go through the whole litany of producing the show, but I got better at using Audacity and got better at making the audio sound decent. And I don't know, by show 10, 12, something like that, I was doing pretty good. And then a little bit later, Pod Show happened, which was Adam Curry's company, turned into Mevio, but at the time it was Pod Show, and they offered free hosting for podcasts, so I didn't have to pay the $5 a month I was paying whoever I was paying. So I jumped ship, moved over there. Of course, I didn't upload any of the older episodes because back then you were limited to about 10 episodes in the feed anyway. Who cares about the old stuff? Let's just keep going. It's a broadcast. And they also had a software package called, I knew I was going to forget the name of it, Cast Blaster, I think. I don't know. Does that sound right? Tom will know if he's listening. But it was a kind of an all-in-one thing. You could put, little things in there, little files, like I do with here. I've got this on a soundboard.
That's all, folks.
Oops, that's not all, but anyway, it's just an idea. All right, I have this.
There's so much other crap you could be listening to, but you chose to listen to Mike Dell's World, and we appreciate it.
Anyway, I got a little soundboard here. I can play music or play sound effects, whatever. And Cast Blaster or whatever it was called had that in there as well. But it would also generate the MP3 file right there. It was kind of a live to the hard drive thing, and that worked. So I used that for, quite a long time. But then I got more sophisticated and, bought mixers and better microphones and so on and so forth. And through the years, everything got better. And along that same time, I decided, hey, let's start a podcast about how to get to be a ham radio operator. And I talked my friend John in to help me with that. So we did a podcast called the Ham Radio Podcast. It was one of the first ham radio podcasts out there and taught people how to get their ham licenses. I won't go into any more detail because I think you probably already heard all this. But then, kind of went crazy and started a bunch of shows, stopped a bunch of shows. And, the rest is history, as they say. But this show has always been, something that I use as an experimental thing, not so much experimental. It's just, sometimes it's just good therapy. I get on the microphone And as you know, if you're listening, and if you've been listening along, sometimes I get on the microphone from the car, or I'm driving along, just describing what's going on and what I'm seeing out the window. And sometimes I play stupid music, and sometimes I just rant about something. That's what this show's about, which is about nothing. A show about nothing. There we go. Here's my wife to tell you what it is.
You're listening to Mike on Mike Dell's World, a show about nothing.
So, and I got a whole bunch of those. I'm not going to play all of them, but Jim Farley, the one that sent the other one. Here, let's try another one from him.
Hi, this is Jim Farley, and you're listening to Mike Dell's World, a show about all things worldly.
So Jim and I did a show together called What's Up With That? And actually, occasionally I have him on here and we do an episode of What's Up With That as a Mike Dell's World episode. Haven't done that in a while. Jim, let's do this. I don't know when he's coming up here. We've been having a blizzard as normal up here, but a little bit above normal as far as the amount of snow and the amount of cold. So we won't talk about the weather. I do that too much. But Jim got into podcasting and had a podcast called Musical World. He is a, composer, arranger for musicals, like on Broadway, that kind of thing. Although I don't think he had anything on Broadway, but maybe. And he still does some of that. But the podcast has pod faded. But it was at musicalworld.us. And Jim has a cottage up here, and then he lives in Dayton, Ohio area, a little north of Dayton. And he comes up here from time to time, so we get to pal around. But and that's the thing about podcasting in general, and this podcast in particular. I've met so many people through this podcast. Lester Graber, I haven't met him in person, but he's one of my online buddies. And he listens, and he actually sent me some station IDs a while back, but I don't know where those are. But I've met just a lot of people. Tom Wiles, Strucker Tom. I've hung out with him several times because of this podcast and others, and it's just a great hobby. And I consider this podcast a hobby. Now, I do some professional podcasting, because that's my job now. Not podcasting. Well, sort of. I'm the host of, or the co-host of Your Podcast by Blueberry. That's one of our corporate podcasts. And so, I guess I do technically get paid to podcast. But most of the time, I'm helping other podcasters get things set up technically and sometimes just basic advice about podcasting and whatever, and I kind of run the support department at Blueberry, which is a podcast host, and they started about 2005, and I met up with them the first time in 2006 at the first podcast portable media expo out in Ontario, California, and then the following year really got to know them, and that was fun, and I've been working for them since 2008. So, like I said, this podcast directly relates now to my job. It's quite a little ride that I've been on because of this little podcast about nothing from a squeaky chair in northern Michigan. Let's see. Let's find another one from. Here we go. Let's try this.
You're listening to Mike on Mike Dell's World Podcast.
Yep, that's Rich Pipe. He's a ham radio operator I met through all my associations and all that, and he actually visited here a couple of years ago, and of course I had to get him on the microphone and get him to do some promos for my show. So that was a lot of fun. And let's see here. Didn't silence my phone, so I had to silence that for now. But anyway, as I say a lot, Anyway, it's really cool. Make it to 300 episodes. Now, truth be known, this is probably the 350th episode or something like that, because I did a lot of phoning it in. Back in the day, there was a site called GarageBand, and it had nothing whatsoever to do with Apple or Apple's GarageBand, but it was just a site, and they also offered free media hosting. So, hey, great. I went ahead and got a WordPress site for MikeDell.com, the very one that I've got now. And at the time, I installed a thing called PodPress that made the RSS feed there, and then I would upload my files to GarageBand. But one of the features of GarageBand is you could also phone in, just dial a phone number, put in your passcode, and then record over the phone. They would record it and put the MP3 on there, and then I had another thing that would see that MP3 and make a post on my WordPress site as a podcast. So I could put out a podcast on my phone. So I would do that, my stupid little Nokia chocolate bar phone, whatever it was, and it'd be wherever I was, dial it up and make a, hey, how you doing, whatever. It was basically voicemail as a podcast episode, but I did quite a few of those. Now I've filtered all those out of the feed, so only studio recordings with official numbers are in there. So, truth be known, this is probably the 350th or so episode, but official numbered studio recorded or otherwise recorded episodes are numbered. This is the 300th, and it's the first show I've made it this far, at least this way. And I did some daily shows where I made it to 365, because I figure once you make the daily show, especially when it comes to something that was history related. I did 2 different history related daily shows, and what was great about it is the first show was good the next year because it was the same date. So I recycled those shows for a while, but I've since killed all those. But anyway, sorry to ramble on. It's been a while since I turned on the microphone. I was kind of wanting to just make an update and say, hey, I'm kind of under the weather here, and the 300th episode will come out later, but then that would have been the 300th episode. So, I wanted to make it a little bit something special. But I really do appreciate, everybody that listens. I see from my statistics that I do have listeners out there, or at least you're downloading them. Maybe you're downloading them and then deleting them, whatever. But, appreciate the effort anyway. And thanks for hanging in there. I know I've got some listeners that been around since nearly the beginning. And, hopefully you continue to enjoy what I do here. Not going to make any big changes. I do plan on, just doing it like I've been doing it. Make a podcast when the mood strikes me and about whatever it is that strikes me. So, as long as you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. So I sure appreciate everybody being here. All right, so instead of just leaving this as is, I figured what I would do is I'd find the episode that was closest to 10 years ago, and I found episode 61 of the Benzoid Report. I don't know what it's all about. I put it out there in January 2011, or January 11th, 2007, I think. I haven't even listened to a second of it, so we're going to listen to it here together, and that'll end out this 300th episode. Everybody have a great week. Stay warm, and I will catch you on episode 301. Benzoid Report number 61 for January 11th, 2007. glad you listened to the rest of that. Got banjo on the mind. I started my lessons here the other day, and so far I've learned to do the what is it? The Scruggs roll. That, and I learned how to tune the banjo, and I learned how to hold it correctly, and all that good stuff. So hopefully someday I'll be able to grace the airwaves, or as this in this case, the bit waves. What do you call the airwaves of podcasting? What would that be? The I don't know, the bit stream? Geez, I don't know. Anyway, welcome to Benzoid Report number 61. And I'm sitting here, it's a Thursday morning. Been doing a lot of podcasting, but not on the Benzoid Report. Where Jim Farley and I, Jim does the opening theme to the Benzoid Report. It's a song called Scootin'. Anyway, Jim and I have been working on a collaborative podcast, which I won't spoil the surprise just yet, but that should be coming in the next few weeks. And it'll be the two of us doing whatever we do there. He's the music guru. Although me taking banjo lessons, I might surpass him. I doubt it. He's been a professional musician for probably roughly about the same amount of time I've been alive. That's going to be my guess. Maybe not quite. He's not that old. But I like to make him feel old. Anyway, so that's the one thing that's going on. The other podcast projects, and I say that plurally, is that the ham radio pod class is alive and well again. We're now feeding version 2 of the technician course, and that's at hamradioclass.org. You can find information on the feed to that, and where to download the episodes and all that good stuff. This time we're hosting on Pod Show. That's John Martin, KF8KK, and myself. And I got the entire class recorded, and I'm slowly editing and putting out the episodes now. I figure a rate of about 2 a week, and should be about 20 episodes in the technician course, give or take. So if you're interested in getting your ham radio license, never been an easier time to do it. Whoa, I just banged the microphone there, sorry. But they've, I won't say dumbed down. They've made it more reasonable. It's just a written test for a technician course license, and they took out a lot of the complicated electronics and replaced it with basic common sense electronics. And so it's a pretty easy test to pass. And once you get your license, you've got access to every ham radio band above 30 megahertz. And you also have, with the newest rule changes by the FCC, by the way, did away with the Morse code requirement completely. So now for technician, general, or extra class licenses, you no longer will need the Morse code. Of course, that won't take effect until February, probably. But once it takes effect, all it is written tests, and they've made the technician a little more reasonable. And John and I are podcasting the class. So get over to hamradioclass.org and and subscribe, and make sure you get the couple of classes that I've fed already, and that'll stay around for as long as Podshow will let us keep it on their servers. That's one good thing about Podshow. I know Curtis had a big dissertation about Podshow and all that, but I think he was talking more about those with the Podshow contract. Not us leeches that are just taking advantage of the free hosting and putting up with the preamble and post little ads or PSAs they throw at the beginning and the end. I can put up with that. Certainly a lot better than paying for the hosting. It was pretty amazing. I started feeding the version 2 ham radio pod class, and I don't know if we got a lot of holdovers from the last class or what, but 2 days in circulation, I'm up to 300 and something per episode of requests and downloads. That's pretty good for a feed that's been dead basically for a year. So anyway, probably a lot of holdovers, but it's good. It's good review material. And then on top of that, John and I are now currently in production. Like I said, I've got all the technician course done, and just basically I'm gonna feed it out, an episode every few days, probably Sundays and Wednesdays. So that's gonna be probably the schedule. But now we've got the general class upgrade pod class, which is also the information is at www.hamradioclass.org. Jeez, what is this? A big plugging podcast? Just plugging all the other stuff, but hey, got to get the word out. Anyway, within a couple of weeks, I'm going to say probably 3 weeks. So I'm going to say somewhere around the 1st of February, we'll be feeding the general classes. We're currently in production for that, and that's the next license class above technician. I've got that on a separate feed, also hosted at Podshow, and that course will run concurrently with the version 2 of the technician course, or the original ham radio pod class. And then probably this summer we'll start work on the extra class, which is the top dog class of ham radio licensees. The general class is it's just the bare minimums to get on the HF shortwave bands, with any meaningful frequency allocations. And a lot of people are totally happy sitting there at that class of license. And that's fine. But the extra class just gives you that little extra, hence the name. And back in the day, you had to know 20 words per minute Morse code to get your extra class. Plus, you had to know all kinds of ridiculous electronic theories. Unfortunately, they did not do away with all the ridiculous electronic theories that we had to go through to get the extra class license, but they did do away with the Morse code. Okay, enough about ham radio. Let's see, what was I going to say? Oh, there we go. Just had to gather my thoughts there. Since I'm marketing this ham radio pod class and the general class upgrade pod class to people that generally don't know what podcasting is in general, there's no pun there. Anyway, I think I've got an appropriate song that I want to play while I regather my thoughts and get this ham radio stuff out of my head, and I've got some other comments to bring up there. So anyway, this is Uncle Seth. You don't need an iPod.
Got a friend from high school, works on Wall Street every day. Said I had a podcast and he shot this look my way. Is that the thing with the iPods? He asked me, no doubtful tone. I shook my head and smiled and said something that you need to know. You don't need an iPod to listen to my show. 68% just listen on their desktop. Stay in the know. My friend said I understand, but it's still too niche for me. I pointed out that Nielsen said 90 million listened recently. One didn't say about 2010, 40 million shows. I smiled and said, well, my friend, what else do you need to know except you don't need an iPod to listen to my show. 68% just listen on their desktop. Stay in the know. You don't need iTunes either, but if you do, that's fine. Google Podcasts and click download. Keep an open mind. Stop, sit down, walk away. Content's on demand. There's a growing online movement you can capture in your hand. Speak your mind, spend some time, express yourself digitally. Times change, you can see there's a brand new way to be seen. But you don't need an iPod to listen to my show. 68% just listen on their desktop. Stay in the know. You don't need an iPod to listen to my show. 68% just listen on their desktops. Still stay in the know. You don't need an iPod to listen to my show. 68% just listen on their desktops. Still stay in the know. You don't need an iPod to listen to my show. 68% just listen on their desktops.
Okay, well, that was Uncle Seth. You don't need an iPod. Well, I figured I'd try a little bed music here. No, not meaning that this is music you need to go to bed by, but music that's underneath my voice as I talk. And you know what? I find it a little distracting actually while I'm listening in the headphones. Hopefully it's not too ridiculous to you. But anyway, I was listening to Curtis talking about depression a while back. And, I gotta say, let me lose this background music here. There it goes. Bye-bye, background music. Anyway, that was called Snowfall by somebody that plays the piano. Anyway, Curtis was talking about depression, and of course that got me to think about it. And I don't know if I would be considered depressed, but I gotta say lately it's been just a lot of complicated things, going on, and I gotta wonder, why does it gotta be so damn complicated all the time? As George Carlin once said, and yes, Curtis, it was really George Carlin and not Bill Maher. I actually heard him say it. George Carlin said something like, why is life so complicated? Really, all you got to do is get up, eat, drink, take a big shit, go back to bed. What's so complicated about that? That was George Carlin quote. And I don't know why it should be that complicated, but it always seems to be that complicated. Even with me, working the night shift, I don't have to deal with anybody directly, and I've got all this other stuff going on in the background. Not related to work. I've got my podcast hobby, I got my ham radio hobby, I've got my emergency communications duties related to the ham radio hobby. And then on top of that, we've got money issues. I mean, that's like I said, I'm not broke, not by a long shot. But we just come off of a 2-week vacation, and so we've got all that stuff going on. We're living in a house that was built in 1940 and not maintained all that well since 1940. Is it Tuesday? I come downstairs here to my podcast studio / ham radio / computer room down here in the basement, which is directly below the kitchen. Well, directly above my desk is the drain pipe for the kitchen sink. Well, for some reason it decided that it was going to start leaking, and so I had a flood on the desk. Well, luckily all the electronic stuff on the desk is up on little rubber feet, and the water never got that deep, but I had a flood right here on my desk. Of course, it was, no big deal. I had to, redo one of the drain pipes. It took me about 5 minutes this morning to finish doing that. But, just one of those things. Why has it got to be that complicated? Well, anyway, sorry to go off on a rant there. I need to find yet another hobby. I've got this podcasting thing, and I got this ham radio thing, and now, of course, I'm learning how to play banjo. So you would think I'd have enough. So, yeah, well, speaking of banjos, one more banjo tune that I heard. I just thought it was cool. It was somebody playing classical music on a banjo, and I definitely want to do some of that once I get up to speed on it. So anyway, here it is. See if you recognize the tune. KFHK. Well, I just thought that was a cool tune. I don't even know where I got that. Been sort of collecting banjo recordings. Like I said, if I'm going to learn to play the thing, I gotta learn what it's supposed to sound like before I attempt it. Man, I get the excuse me, got the hiccups for some reason. That's what happens when you eat dry bread and don't drink enough. So, oh well. I think I can muddle through now. Well, I was going to comment on something Trucker Tom brought up on one of his podcasts. It's been kind of an ongoing thing between him and the Nobody Likes Onions podcast. The fans and or podcasters involved with the Nobody Likes Onions podcast keep sending him vulgar and attempting to demean him emails. And of course, Tom handles it correctly and just kind of blows them off, but does say something. Well, years ago, here in Traverse City, we had a similar situation with a ham radio club, which will remain nameless because I don't want to, not trying to insult the current members of that club. But suffice it to say, there was a couple of individuals, and those two individuals, and it's just two. Those two individuals are still actively pursuing their hatred towards myself and John Martin, KF8KK, who is my partner in the ham radio pod class. And how do I put it? They do the same thing that Tom talks about with the Nobody Likes Onions podcast. They do attempt personal attacks. They attempt to disparage the character of us. At one time, one of the big things was they thought that John and I were gay lovers. Well, hey, that's the truth. That's what they thought. That's not what it was, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but who gives a shit? As far as I'm concerned, if that was the case, well, so be it. It has nothing to do with my ability or John's ability to participate in amateur radio or amateur radio clubs or teaching amateur radio classes or whatever, emergency communications. But, it definitely was not true. And like I said, even if it was, so what? But anyway, that was one of the two individuals' big gripe. The other big gripe was that they thought that John was trying to take over the 2-meter ham band spectrum. It's like these guys have egos that are like the size of Texas. They think they're the be all and end all in the hobby. Well, first off, it's a hobby. Nobody cares that much about it. I mean, you do, but you don't, If the FCC said, tomorrow that ham radio was going away, well, yeah, I'd kind of be bummed out, but on the other hand, I could be just fine with it too, But these guys think they're God's gift to the amateur radio community. And, and there's people like that in all walks of life. It's like podcasting. There's people out there that think they're the be all and end all to podcasting, and they do everything right. And if you don't do it the way they do it, you're evil. You're the Antichrist. It's like the big deal with ham radio here. In recent years was Morse code. Okay, up until just this last week or so, you had to have Morse code to. You had to pass a Morse code test. You had to prove that you could copy Morse code at 5 words per minute. Before, a few years ago, it was 20 words per minute and 13 words a minute. But the last few years, it's been 5 words per minute for Morse code to access any band lower than 30 megahertz, which is known as the HF, or the shortwave frequencies. And you had to demonstrate that you could copy Morse code. That's been a big controversy amongst hams. I'd say it's probably a 50-50 split, same as Democrats and Republicans in this country. It's probably a 50-50 split of people that think that you should know Morse code to get on the ham bands, and that's just it. Well, back in the day, Morse code was needed. That's how hams talked to each other. They didn't even have microphones. It was basically a great big spark plug. People, tapped out Morse code on this giant spark plug, and somebody 15 or 20 miles away from them could hear their spark gap Morse code, and and that's how that's how it got started. And even up until the 50s anyway, well, I don't know, I guess maybe earlier than that they had AM voice, but CW, or Morse code, CW is what the hams call it, because it's continuous wave keying. But anyway, that's been a humongous controversy. A lot of the old timers, and old doesn't necessarily mean age; it's mentality. But a lot of the old timers, the ones with big egos, say, "Well, I had to pass 13 words per minute to get my general class license, and everybody else should have to too." Well, okay, yeah, but there's actually modes now that CW, or Morse code, used to be able to penetrate when nothing else will. But now there's digital modes. There's one called PSK31, or phase shift keying, and basically it's a computer that does some fancy footwork through the sound card, and that goes out over the radio, and it is as fast as tapping out Morse code, but it's got some error correcting, and it'll get through on even less of a signal. So it's just not absolutely necessary that everybody knows Morse code. I mean, and I've played with my fair share of Morse code, and it's fun. So anyway, not to beat the ham radio thing to death, but the FCC did away with the Morse code testing for all classes of amateur radio license. Finally, and if you think about it, if everybody thought the way that some of the old timer hams thought, I'd be out sitting in an outhouse taking a dump later on, because Granddad did it that way. Well, no, that's not how it goes. Things change. With laptop computers and lithium-ion batteries and all that, I can take my little PSK 31 station running 5 watts and running off my laptop and, a wet noodle antenna, and I can get through where, it would take 100 watts of Morse code to get through. That wasn't the case even 10, 15 years ago. But, Morse code is an outmoded mode. It's just the way it is. It's not that it should go away. It shouldn't be a requirement for getting your ham radio license. A lot of guys say, well, it takes a lot of, everybody that learned 20 words per minute Morse code, they're just a better person than somebody that only learned 5 words per minute. Well, that's bullshit. Some of the biggest assholes I know in ham radio have at least 13 words per minute Morse code tests that they've passed. And, a lot of them had the 20. It has nothing to do with character. I could probably pass a 20 word per minute code check, even today, and I don't use Morse code that often, but, it's just, I did learn it. It doesn't make me a better person or a worse person. So, anyway, geez, I should get off this ham radio kick. Sorry about that. It's just been on my mind. I just get so tired of, all these big ego people, both in podcasting, ham radio, underwater basket weaving, whatever. And there's always, somebody that thinks their shit don't stink and their farts give them away. So, anyway, enough of that. I really don't have anything else for today. Like I said, I just turned on the mic and had no idea what I was going to do. But there, you've heard it, and I've done it. And I think I'll leave you with the Creative Commons license spiel. I won't play the prepackaged one. I'll just say it. This podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons 2.5 attribution, no derivatives license. That means, basically, you can use whatever you want to use from it. Just don't try to make money with it without asking me first. And let's see, I've added on there, please don't play this over amateur radio because it's illegal, and I don't want it to be played over ham radio. And the reason I say that is last summer I heard myself transmitted over a ham radio repeater. I know exactly who was doing it. Just Curtis, this is for you. This is just to clarify why I mentioned that. Rebroadcasting what I say via amateur radio is expressly not legal because rebroadcasting is not allowed unless it's rebroadcasting of amateur radio and or with permission. And I do not give my permission for this to go out over ham radio. I've got a different microphone and a different set of apparatus for my stuff to go out over ham radio, and music's not allowed on ham radio, cussing's not allowed on ham radio, and I will not cuss and I will not play music over ham radio, but I will on my podcast because it's my podcast, and the FCC has nothing to do with it. So, anyway. Geez, I don't know why I got on this damned ham radio rant. Anyway, the ham radio pod class that I've been speaking of before, we've got a new theme song, and yeah, you're right. It's banjo. But anyway, I'll close on that. Like I said, this podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons 2.5 attribution, non-derivatives, 2.5 license. Well, that was crazy. Anyway, here's the theme, the new theme to the ham radio pod class, and if anybody's interested in getting their ham license or upgrading to general class from technician class, please go to www.hamradioclass.org. And I promise number 62 will not even mention the word ham radio. Anyway, enjoy. Here's the theme to the ham radio pod class.
Blaster.
Well, if you're still here, I guess the bad audio quality and all that didn't chase you away. But yeah, I was right, Cast Blaster, because they had that little tagline right at the end. It was Cast Blaster Mike, or whatever, some guy named Mike in the Netherlands that wrote the software. He also did a thing called Vid Blaster, which was very popular for a long time, and I don't know if it's still around. It might be. But anyway, this is Mike back in 2018. Everybody have a great week, as I said before, and I will catch you next time.